Welcome to the Creative Lens podcast, where a musician and a artist slash designer talk about our experiences with all thing creativity and being involved in our own businesses related to our art. So my name's Ryan. We've got Wade on the other end of this podcast. How you doing today, man?
I'm good. And how are you guys? I mean, I can't hear you, but answer out loud for me, please.
3, 2,
and how
1.
are you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, dude. So the topic of today's podcast, man, is it's a fun one, and it gets thrown around a lot. Is hustle culture?
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. It's such a cliche, man. Like, and obviously, people might be listening to this and start to pick up our stances on these things. But as people who have, we're not 20 anymore, dude. Like, so. We're not really, I wouldn't consider us in the side of the hustle culture. But I think it all boils down to priorities, man. So we're going to start, how do you want to start unpacking this one today, Wade?
Well, I guess I have a point of view that so some people are like very black and white. Some people, and I like the idea of framing it as this is like a nice launch point. The fact that some people are all like, you have to work 70 hours a week if you're going to get anywhere. And other people are just like, nah, you don't do that. And there are also, to compound that, people who did work 60, 70 hours a week for a period of time who then dial it back. Like, I used to work a lot. Now I only do about 30 hours a week. And sometimes you'll get those people say, oh, I can't believe I wasted my time spending that much time doing this, while the other people are swearing black and blue you need to. I think it depends on you and your availability, and I don't think you should be aiming to be hustling all the time. But you can at the start if you need to. Is pretty much my stance. It's a good launch point for where I think this could go.
Yeah, look, the idea of hustle culture sort of, man, what does that trigger off in my head? When I think of hustle culture, I think about young people who are sort of maybe for want of a better term, lacking a bit of perspective and priorities in life, and maybe with certain areas of their life not going certain ways they want. I don't know. That's probably being a bit rough, actually. But I know there's been definite periods in my life where I was, quote unquote, getting after it, putting in like really long hours, and you're doing something which sounds really great on paper and exciting, but the reality of it is rather like overworking and loneliness and just not really enjoying the experience. So I put down hustle culture too. Like, if you have to hustle at something 60, 70 hours a week, like, look, put it this way. If you've got, a wife and a young family, and you're wanting to get this idea off the ground, and sometimes that's what you got to do. You got to do what you need to do at times. But I think in terms of a longevity perspective, I don't think hustle culture is very good for you. And I think even with creative endeavors too, man, like, I don't think relentless work at something creatively, like, you have to work hard, but I think there's a point of diminishing returns with creativity, because once you're stressing and doing, like, I can't imagine doing 70 hours a week of art. I think your art would just suffer, and would just boil down to just formalized, just jargon after a while, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally think the good time to do it, if you are doing it, is because we've all been at that stage where we found an interest or something we want to pursue, and your brain won't rest. When your brain is constantly thinking of that thing, that's a good time if you have the time and you're not. Because obviously, from a moral perspective, if you have committed to a wife or a family, you have to give them your time. And I know that seems like a weird thing to bring up on a business and creativity podcast, but I mean, we're human. You got to look after the people around you as well. But if you're young, it's mainly just you, and your brain won't stop thinking about what you're doing, that could be a good time to do it, because you'll probably get a lot of joy out of it. But ultimately, there's a few reasons why you don't want to be doing it like that way. For one is it doesn't force you to be efficient. Like, I used to do a lot of long hours, and then when I had kids, I couldn't put those hours in at night anymore because I was busy with the kids, and it forced me to drop a lot of things, and I got a lot better a lot quicker, and I realized I used to waste a lot of time. And on top of that, you burn yourself out. So your ability to focus and be efficient will be improved with a little bit of pressure on your time and not just having open slather like I just do this all the time. So there's two sides to that. It can be a good way to really accelerate your learning, but at the same time, at some point, you got to put some pressure on yourself to be a bit more efficient with your time, because that's kind of where it comes down to in a business, is efficiency, scalability, that kind of thing, I believe.
Yeah, well, I think that's a really good point, is being efficient. And because we were talking about before we actually hit record today, like I was saying recently, I've started just dialing, because I've had a super busy year. I've had a lot of commitments, like business and private life as well, where I've just started dialing things back for the last quarter of the year. And I was saying to you, like, I feel like I'm getting more done working less, which is it's a weird, like, and I think it's one of those things, until you've actually had that experience, it's like saying to someone who's like so in the momentum of they're used to getting up and they've got that little thing chipping away on their shoulder, like, oh, I got to do this, I got to do that, otherwise I'm not going to reach my goal. Like, if you just work like maybe 75% of your like max capability, but you can do that week in, week out, like year after year, you're probably going to get a lot more done in the long run, as opposed to just burning the candle at both ends and maybe having like an amazing 18 months to 2 years, and then you've burnt out, your personal life's a wreck. Because I don't know about you, like it's like we sound like old people, man. We need rocking chairs and pipes and like
40 now, Ryan.
Yeah, man.
Like I said, you can call people son and young man now if you want to.
I do that for fun, man. I do that for fun because like this one guy I train with, he's an absolute legend, this guy, and he's always like, "Hey, son," and I'm just like, that's so cool. Yeah, man. But sort of coming back to the point is actually I didn't see you at bingo on Tuesday night, Wade, but we don't do bingo yet. But coming back to the point is, it's just until you actually experience what something's like and the flow or the feeling of that, like you can have people tell you, all you need to do is just dial it back a little bit and create that balance in your life. Because I think if you go too hard for too long, like you're going to get out of balance with other areas of your life, which ultimately fuel your reasons for wanting to work and wanting to do things.
I'm totally someone who puts way too much pressure on myself in that sense. Like to sort of illustrate some personal points. For one, I have a business. I've got kids. I've got a wife who's studying a uni degree, and I teach 2 martial arts. And I want to be amazing at all of those things. And sometimes you just find yourself sort of going, how do I do this? And when it comes to business, which is the thing that literally pays for all this to happen, it's not the most important thing. Family is. Family's the most important thing, family and health. But when I'm driven to do, I have these visions of like, if I do all this stuff, this is what's going to make it happen. But when the time is chopped down and I have no choice, it forces me to go, well, the main thing I have to do is this. And then when you're stuck in that situation time and time again, slowly you realize what's not really contributing. The 80-20 rule, like you slowly start to highlight the 20% that gets you 80% of the results, and you're able to shift your focus more and slowly drop off the distractions. And I think that's where time constraint is really good, and it forces you to focus.
Yeah, because it's excuse me. But one thing that's a really good point. But one thing I think goes with that, Wade, is because if you have balance in your life, whether it's friends or family or hobbies and activities you love to do, like you have to be more efficient in your time to be able to enjoy those things. Like no one, I imagine there's a very small percentage of the population who just loves work. Like they can't wait to wake up and check their email. But I imagine the chickens are going to come home to roost at some point with that eventually, like whether like the idea of the job, because I see it with people who work in law and finance, and it's just like, I just look at them and just go, what the fuck are you guys doing to yourselves? Like they're just on call, like 16 hours a day. Like just, they're constantly checking their phone. It's just like, mate, what are you doing? Like you are going to be burnt out and nervous wreck by the time you're like 30, 35. And like that law degree will be there's no way your partner's going to put up with that. Like you just being so distant the whole time.
Absolutely. I know that every step from being an employee to running a freelancing business to now doing something that's a little bit more passive in nature, in the sense that, like, as long as the assets are up on YouTube, I'm making money. I've both loved and hated all those things. But the important thing is, at some point I did love them. Whereas some people get jobs they hate and they're stuck there for whatever reason. And I'm not judging anyone, because some people are forced into those positions. So, you know, like, it's, yeah, at the end of the day, I've loved those jobs, but there's a point where it's just like, I need some time away. And I guess that's what you're saying. It's good to keep balance. Sometimes you have to tip the balance a little bit and go, you know what? That's why you have holidays. That's why sometimes you do hustle a little bit. Other times you go, I'm stepping back. You got to keep the balance moving. It's always like a fluid thing.
Yeah. I remember one thing I was in my head when I was in my 20s, Wade. I was like, okay, when I get this done, or when I get to that point, then I can relax and then I'll be happy. And then you get that and you're like, oh, that's amazing. But that comes with more pressures and more other things you have to perform. And when I get this done, I'll get paid this and then I'll be happy. And like, but if you're just doing something for the payoff, most of the time the payoff can't compensate for the amount of anguish that you have to go through to get it. And eventually, if you go through that cycle enough times, you're going to start learning, like, Jesus, this isn't actually ticking the boxes for me. Like, just shutting my life off is just not for this one sole purpose isn't ticking the boxes for me. And like, that's a dark place to be, man. Like, so I think, sorry, just to cut you off, but I think one thing, and this is something sometimes people will just have to experience this for themselves, is just to go, all right, I need to enjoy the process of what I'm doing. Because if I can't enjoy it now, I'm not going to enjoy it down the track. Sometimes things are difficult. Sometimes there's traction. Sometimes things are stickier to get moving than you think. But if you can't at least enjoy the work that you're doing, like, that's probably not a good sign that you're on the right track with a lot of things, creatively at least.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you find that you can enjoy the process, then you're just living your life, and improving your income improves your life outside of that. And you get to a point where you're balancing work that works for you. But if you don't enjoy that work, and this might be an unpopular opinion, if you hate your job and you're not making much money, I feel like that's a better place to be than the golden handcuffs, where you hate your job, but you're making a ton of money. Because the difference is, if you're not making much money, it's easy to go, all right, I'm going to go and try something else. I'm going to move on. Yeah. But the whole idea of the whole golden handcuffs thing, you're making 300 grand a year and you hate your life, you're like, but then I'll make less money. And that's a harder thing to step away from, especially if you tie that money to your identity. So I know we're getting off the hustle culture path a little bit, but a lot of people who are making a ton of money in a job they hate are also doing 60-hour weeks.
Well, that's the thing, and you see it with like, just you come across, like, with when I was doing more writing production stuff, you come across it with lawyers, and you sort of, after you have your work or your work chats with them, you're sort of chatting, and like, I remember this one guy or girl or fictitious person I'm about to mention. We'll call him Tiffany.
We'll call her Tiffany. She's a dancer at we'll call it a bar. Anyway,
I'm making up a story. Not. And it's like, you know, after you're like chatting about stuff, so how's stuff? And they're like, yeah, I'm on my third divorce. And it's just like, maybe, yeah, it's like, okay, cool. Like, what do you say to someone like that? Like, just like, okay, cool. Maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. You feel for them. But yeah, what do you say? There are situations like that with people, where you just, part of me wishes to go, hey, look, let me do this and I'll fix all your problems. But you can't. It doesn't work that way.
I see it with people, like, just pushing, how you talk about expectations and that, like, I remember, like, we spoke about this on another podcast, but people who have been really excellent in one field and they want to get into something creative, right? And they don't have the creative background, but they think that ability to work hard and success, it will eventually translate to success in whatever they're doing by keeping at it. But like, they expect like elite level success within like 2 years. Like, I've seen that with people like artistically, and it's just like, man, like, you just, and their lives are miserable because they're making it, they're doing the hustle thing, they're grinding, all those words that people like to use, but they're just they just don't have the expertise to cut it at that level yet, man.
Well, sorry.
And like,
I agree, because the other thing too is it's a programming, because if you're someone who goes, the way I succeed at something is to put in a ton of time to get through it, is that then all of a sudden you become this hustling life person who's like, okay, I hustle at work, and then in order to maintain the relationships with your family, you're constantly hustling with the family, but like what you might need is just some downtime with them. You're hustling at everything, you're putting energy in everywhere, and then before you know it, you're getting 4 hours sleep a night and you're miserable. Like, I think it's important to understand that it's taking a step back and understanding the concept of the way to succeed at something is to better understand it, to be efficient with it, or like in a way that works for you. Because then, like with my family, I know with my kids, I know to spend time with them at the right times, but I also know that when they're playing quietly by themselves and they're content, it's like, that's the time to go and get something done. And then when they want attention, I can stop and go, hey, like, it's not quite that black and white, but it's very much a big part of like just how to think about things. You gotta understand something, not just, it's like, if all you're doing, I don't have a good example, unfortunately, but it's like if you're trying to dig a hole, if you go, cool, it might take me 5 weeks, but I'm going to get the shovel and I'm going to dig this big hole just with the shovel. That's hustle culture. If you just go, you know what, I can save up and get a bobcat, have it done in a day, then you've got all that time that you didn't spend doing it to make the money to pay for the bobcat.
Yeah, I like that.
It's
good.
I've got my brain's buzzing with a few ideas at the moment now that I've said that.
Yeah, but I think the thing is, it's, I guess, like, as two people who probably aren't on social media that much and, been around the block a little bit with these sorts of issues, like, we've got a bit of life experiences sort of that we've lived through and learnt directly from. I think for people who are sort of coming up and they might be in a spot where they feel like they're constantly coming up against it, it's like, you can be world-class elite at something and be building yourself to be world-class elite at something, but getting away with less work. But it's that old saying, mate, working smarter, not harder.
Absolutely. Intelligence over brawn. Sometimes you need the brawn, but intelligence is what gets you the furthest.
Yeah, 100%, man. Well, dude, I think is there anything you want to
There is
up?
one thing I want to say too, is that I'm just adjusting my seat there. It's not just about the overall time you spend, but think about hustling on the individual jobs. Because I know this might seem like a little bit of I don't know if it's a sidestep or not, but it's something I wanted to express. Because we were talking about this before the podcast. When my YouTube channel took off, the area I was looking at, I know that the last podcast we did, we talked about having setting things up, stacking in your favor. Because I was a designer and had been building imagery and stuff my whole life professionally, when the AI image generators came out, I could apply that knowledge to that and give an expert opinion pretty quickly because I had less of a gap to jump. But the other thing is, people when I first started doing it, weren't editing the videos, they were recording their screens, they were boring as. So I spent a lot of time editing my videos, and I created these really beautiful videos that went for a long period of time, but they took me days to make. So for one video, I was hustling to get a video out, and then I dialed it right back, performance slipped, and then over time I've worked out where to put the effort. So even on a video by video basis on my channel, and this could be with any project or any work you do, understanding, okay, where am I just kind of doing the little things that don't really count? And again, focusing like, this is the stuff that makes the difference. And it's better to have that mindset than a hustle mindset. And it's not just about your time and your schedule, but it's also how you approach your skill set and your projects and the things in your life. I just want to use that example because I think it's a good example to illustrate that.
Yeah, because actually, I was having a conversation with someone recently, a friend of mine, is actually an ex-client, but him and his brother have a really, really successful like TikTok channel. They're killing it online at the moment. And they're doing a ton of like videos for big companies and movies. And they've just got their first, like little web series where they're actually doing like their own, I don't know what it is, but it's like a little TV series, like to produce it online. And I was just chatting with him over coffee, and he was chatting about the workflow and like how he feels like their workflow is clunky and they need to sort of tighten that up a bit. And like, cause they're spending too much time on certain things, which like probably aren't moving the needle what they should. So even at like, it's an ongoing process, that, isn't it? Even at a high level, like where people are starting to have success in like actual monetary success in what they're doing, but you can always look to be a little bit more efficient and find those ways which move the needle.
Absolutely. It's definitely possible. There are plenty of creators out there who do it. Plenty of business people out there who spend less time, make more money. Actually, our mutual friend we were discussing a little while ago.
The famous mutual friend.
The famous mutual friend. Just so you know, we'll refer to this mutual friend. He's quite successful, but at the same time, we don't want him to be listening to this going, why are they talking about me? But he was telling me a story about a lawyer who he had built this agency up and he no longer wanted to put in all these hours. He wanted to start dialing it back. And the way he did that is he just started bumping his prices up. But the funny thing is, the more he increased his prices, the more people thought this guy knows his stuff. And it's getting to the point where he's just keeping increasing his prices and he's getting more and more inquiries to work with him, and he's just having to basically say no if he wants to protect his time. So it just goes to show you that like there are so many elements. It's not just the hours you put in that will make you the money in a business. There are so many different ways you can think about it that will get you paid, get that profit margin up, and you just got to work towards it and try things out.
Yeah, for sure. Only a lawyer would pull that one off.
Yeah. Talk about a creative industry. Yeah. Let me figure out creatively how I can
get more money for less. Yeah. All right, dude. Well, let's bring this one home. So, did you want to wrap anything up before we cut it off?
Mate, I feel like I got everything out. Just hustle if you feel you need to or if you can, but at the end of the day, aim to rein it in, become more efficient, scalable, because at some point you're going to want to live the rest of your life.
Yeah. Hustle with balance, man.
Yep.
Hustle with balance, because it's the intensity. Like 75% over 10 years will achieve way more than 100% over like 5 years, and then you're a burning mess.
Oh, consistency over intensity. Another quote.
There you go, man. The quote. We should change our name from the Creative Lens to the Quotes Podcast.
Well, maybe we should just...
Maybe I'll have to get better at actually doing quotes.
The consistent lens.
The consistent lens, yeah. All right, man. Where can the good people find you, young Wade?
Well, first of all, they can find me on the Creative Lens Podcast Instagram page. They can find both of us there, but if you're looking for me in particular... I don't know if you wanted me to interject that one there, but anyway, just search for Creator Impact. Primarily, I'm on YouTube, but also the other socials and my website, creatorimpact.com. Otherwise, where can they find you, Ryan?
Well, if the people are interested in checking out my wares as a musician and online coach, you can find me at HPM Guitar on YouTube is the channel there. The website is www.hpmguitar.com, and you can find my personal Instagram at Ryan Wyatt, WYATT, guitar, all one word. So thanks very much for listening. Hope you all got something out of it or some perspectives of from us, from the creative side of things, and from some people who've been around the block a bit. And we'll catch up with you on the next episode.
Peace.